Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, the new Hanover County Board of Education stands strong against a teacher walkout, a teacher protest that is scheduled on May the 1st. We'll have all the details coming up. And a good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand in your favorite podcast app by simply searching for the Nick Craig Show. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our program this morning is brought to you by the Law Group here in Wilmington. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com. Or give them a call, 910-251-6088. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. On Friday's show, we talked about a staged protest that is set to come forward here in North Carolina coming up on May the 1st. That is a Friday, and it is being put together by the North Carolina Association of Educators, or NCAE. That is the group. They self-define themselves. This is reading directly from their website because there seems to be some confusion here as to what this organization is. So folks will argue, well, the NCAE is not a union. It's not. Well, this is reading directly from the bottom of their website. Quote, "The North Carolina Association of Educators, NCAE, is our leading voice for educational excellence for children and their families and for the public schools that they count on. As the Public School Employees Union and the largest association of professional educators in North Carolina, our membership extends to all 100 counties and includes teachers, non-certified school staff, administrators, students, retirees, and community allies." So they self-describe themselves as a union. So anybody that will tell you, and I saw some rumblings on social media over the last couple of days, the NCAE is not a union. I mean, I'm just taking their word for it. This is their website, ncae.org, and it's on the bottom of every single page on their website. So let's make sure we get the ground rules set straight on this. The NCAE is a teachers union. The teachers union is encouraging educators to walk out of the classroom on May the 1st, which is, as I mentioned, a Friday, and go to Raleigh. Talked about this on Friday. If you missed Friday's show, you can check it out. I'd encourage you to go listen to it in your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. Search for the Nick Craig Show and listen to Friday's episode because I'll go into more detail. I do go into more detail on exactly what's behind that protest. I'll have a little bit here today, but check out Friday's show for a more in-depth discussion and conversation. That is what's coming down the pike here in North Carolina. And reading directly from, again, their website, thousands to gather May the 1st in Raleigh, demanding increased funding for public schools, accountability for voucher spending, that's the Opportunity Scholarship Program that they're talking about, and an end to policies prioritizing tax cuts over students. And it is important to note that groups like the NCAE, which is a union, self-described as the largest teachers union in the state of North Carolina, these groups have become way too political. That is the premise behind a lot of the frustration that I have, and I think of the frustration that a lot of even middle-of-the-road and right-leaning individuals had. Well, I'm not even talking about full-blown conservatives or full-blown Republicans. You look at a group that claims to be, and by in fact is, the largest teachers union in the state of North Carolina, and you find a group that is so slanted politically, has such a strong political ideology on the left, it is hard to divorce from that. And you know, the group has decided that that's their way to go. They have aligned themselves exclusively with Democrats. They have aligned themselves exclusively with progressives and progressive causes here across the state of North Carolina and the nation. So to me, it is only fair that they are described as such. I didn't make that decision. They made that decision. Part of the reason I believe that the protest is happening on May the 1st is that in Raleigh, where this is taking place, Wake County Public Schools have what is called a teacher workday on that Friday, which For those that are not familiar, students are not in the classroom on a teacher workday. Educators, it is given to them as an opportunity to catch up on grading, catch up on course prep, catch up on any work they might be behind on because they're not having to teach students throughout the day. They are still supposed to show up to work. It is a full work day for them. They are full-time employees after all, even though they only work 9.5, 10 months a year. They're full-time employees. It's a teacher workday. They're supposed to be there catching up on their work. That it's like a hybrid, kind of a day off, for lack of a better term, for these individuals. So that, I think, is the reason why this is taking place on May the 1st. It makes sense. You've got a large amount of teachers in Wake County Public Schools. I think that's the second largest or first. It's either the second or first largest school district in North Carolina. So it makes sense that you would coincide it with a teacher workday. Other school districts across the state of North Carolina, of which there's like 121 or something like that, they do not have teacher workdays on Friday, May the 1st. It is a regular educational day for them, for their students, for their school district. And so this is creating a very interesting situation that is now playing out across North Carolina, because you've got this teachers union that is encouraging teachers to show up to Raleigh on Friday, May the 1st, to voice their opposition to the Republican-led North Carolina General Assembly, to make their voice heard as it relates to school choice, which is a very popular program, not only here in North Carolina, but across the nation. Political polling continues to back up that school choice is very popular. And so it is putting other districts across the state in a very precarious situation, because they are supposed to be, their teachers, their educators are supposed to be in the classroom teaching on May the 1st. But unfortunately, as you and I know, many individuals within public school education in North Carolina and across the rest of the nation are hyper political. That is why there has been such a mass exodus from public schools. Parents, guardians, grandparents, whoever is responsible for a child have found themselves fed up with the political nature of what is going on in classrooms across North Carolina and the U.S. And so for these left-wing, radical, ideological progressives that are teachers within the public school system, they are now starting to call out sick and put in PTO requests on May the 1st to go up to Raleigh, which, by the way, is their right to do so. You are an employee, you get time off, you take your time off if it is feasible for your employer. And if you want to spend your day off driving to Raleigh and complaining about how Republicans are terrible and awful and destroying the education system, have at it. That's your prerogative. That is your right to do so. I don't have any issue with that. I'm not frustrated with the fact that teachers and educators are going to Raleigh to protest. I support their right to protest, absolutely. What I do have a problem with is when the teachers union, which claims to be for education, claims to be for bettering public schools across the state of North Carolina, I do have serious objections when that group is encouraging what it can only be described as an illegal strike in North Carolina. The state has general statute, laws on the books that prohibit strikes by public employees. So that's any state, county, city official. If you are a public employee, you are expressly prohibited from striking. That's exactly what we're talking about. That is exactly what educators are doing and threatening to do coming up on May the 1st. They are calling out sick. They are putting in PTO requests, and they are striking. They are leaving their job. And so I have an objection with a group that proclaims to be this bastion, this savior of public education, scheduling this mass walkout on for what the vast majority of public schools across the state is a normal day where teachers are supposed to be in the classroom and children are supposed to be in the classroom learning. That is my objection. And so we've seen school systems across the state now trying to refinagle their calendar to try and not make sure that they don't have to close a bunch of schools or have a bunch of substitutes in the classroom because a bunch of teachers are going to go to Raleigh and protest public school funding across North Carolina. One of those school districts in which that conversation is taking place is New Hanover County, where The city of Wilmington is hosted. It is a very purple county across the state of North Carolina. Many political minds describe it and call it a swing county, a bellwether county that very much kind of determines the way in which politics are changing throughout the state of North Carolina, and that is where that conversation is taking place. So yesterday, there was a specially called meeting of the New Hanover County Board of Education to discuss changing their calendar. And I put this post up on my X account yesterday. If you're not following me over there, you should do so at Nicholas M. Craig. The New Hanover County school system had a designated teacher workday scheduled for Monday, May the 4th. So just a couple of days after this Friday, May the 1st date, in which the NCAE, the teachers union, is encouraging teachers to abandon their schools and go protest in Raleigh. And so the superintendent brought forth a concept, an idea of moving the teacher workday from Monday, May the 4th, to Friday, May the 1st, to capitulate with the NCAE, the left-wing teachers union in the state of North Carolina. And so a meeting took place, a specially called meeting took place yesterday, in which that discussion took place. And I'm going to start off with the superintendent. This is how he laid out why he was having these concerns, why he was bringing this to the board for their vote and for their discussion. This is Superintendent Dr. Barnes of the New Hanover County School System.
Currently, we have a teacher workday scheduled for May 4th. We have gotten word that there is a call to action for educators for May 1st. I've looked at the sub list. I think I'm backing off of making a recommendation. I'm just giving you guys this to consider that at the end of the school year, instructional time is pivotal. Little concerned about if Friday becomes a day where a lot of teachers are out, and then we're already out Monday, we may be sacrificing a teacher workday we may be sacrificing some instruction on May 1st. But I want to make it clear that however this goes, school's going to be fine. I'm not going to create unsafe situations. We're going to be fine with that. I just am awful concerned about the amount of instructional time that we could lose if we have a preponderance of subs on the 1st and then also a day off on the 4th.
And it's a great point there made by the superintendent. You've got potentially a bunch of teachers, kind of a mass protest style event taking place on Friday, May the 1st. Then on Monday, May the 4th is supposed to be a teacher workday. So you're talking about 2 instructional days on opposite sides of a weekend, a Friday and a Monday, that would now be lost due to the fact of these teachers walking out on Friday and then an already pre-planned workday on Monday the 4th. More from the superintendent of the New Hanover County School System.
This is not about this board, and I want to make sure the public understands that this is not about do we support teachers or not. You guys have demonstrated that you support teachers in numerous ways. If we didn't have a workday already sitting there, we just roll on. But I wanted you guys to have the ability to consider shifting that workday from the Monday to the Friday prior to enable us to ensure that we didn't lose that instructional time.
You know, I find this very objectionable. I think the idea that a school system should be put in a position to bow down to the teachers union, again, who proclaims to be this bastion, this savior of public schools. And now school systems across the state of North Carolina are scrambling to figure out what are they going to do with their calendars, which, by the way, families plan around. We'll hear that from some of the board members coming up here in just a couple of minutes. I find that to be very objectionable. I find that to be a major problem when school systems are essentially being backed into a corner. That's what this is, being backed into a corner by the teachers union. I find that to be a major, major problem. Judy Justice, who is a Democrat on the New Hanover County Board of Education, one of just 2 Democrats on a 7-member board. The Republicans do have the majority there. Had some very interesting thoughts on this teacher workday. Take a listen to this.
I've lived the life of a teacher. I have close friends that are teachers now, and they're struggling and they're barely getting by. And as I said, they're not political. I went into this not because I don't like politics. The only reason I'm sitting here right now is because I'm a teacher.
Well, and I got to stop the clip right there because the individual saying this, and I'm going to kind of tip you off on something that I consistently hear, specifically from individuals that clearly have no idea what they're doing in government. This claim of, I'm not political. On face value, you are literally an elected official. You are, by definition, political. And so, but she says, but the only reason I'm here is because I'm a teacher. A little bit of background, a little bit of context on the individual that you're hearing, Judy Justice. She just ran in a Republican county commission primary and lost. She ran to be a Democrat on the New Hanover County Board of Commissioners and lost in the primary. So this concept that you're not political as an elected official, this idea that you're not political as you seek higher public office is total garbage. It is a complete and total lie. It is so disingenuous, and it is something that I'm seeing more and more being used by the political left. Anytime there's an objection on something, anytime they disagree with what's going on, this is their tack that they go with. I'm not political. This isn't political. This shouldn't be political. Politics this, politics that. You're a public official. You ran for public office with a party designation next to your name. You were a registered Democrat and won a seat on the school board as a Democrat. Stop gaslighting me into this. I'm not political. You're literally a public official. You are literally a politician. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. And I continually hear this from individuals when they have nothing else to say is, I'm not political. This shouldn't be political. It should be political. It's politics. That's what we're talking about. You are an elected official in the state of North Carolina. It is absolutely political, and it should be. That's what people elect politicians to do. Sorry.
We need to support our teachers. It's such a simple thing just to move that work day. I know it's going to be hard for some parents because it's going to take them they got a couple weeks notice though to rearrange whatever it is their plans are. We got a lot of people that need to be able to go up there to Raleigh and give their voices to what kind of life that they're struggling with right now, and that they need to at least, they just need to at least to have enough money to survive. And our kids need to have the materials in schools to learn. This isn't even about teachers and their families anymore. When we're 51st in the nation in per pupil expenditure, and when you see the wonderful job our teachers do, because we're not at the bottom of the pile when it comes to the results, and that shows how hard they work. Mm-hmm. So give them the right to go, have a voice, and say, we care about our kids' education and our families. So I don't see what's so hard about switching a day. It's a little difficult, but it's a heck of a lot more important that we support our teachers and give them that opportunity.
Yeah, it's a heck of a lot more important that children lose a day of instruction so a bunch of radical left-wing teachers can go to Raleigh and yell and scream about how awful Republicans are. And she made a comment there that I just have to completely dispel. Teachers, those working in public schools, teachers, they can't get by. They're not making enough money to even pay their bills. That is just inherently false. The average teacher salary in North Carolina is somewhere around $55,000 a year. That is a 10-month salary that you are paid throughout the entire year. Plus you are a state employee, receiving state health care, state pension, all of the benefits of being a public employee. This concept, this idea that you can't live your life on an average salary of $50,000, and this is starting teacher pay, around $55,000 a year, is absurd. Now, is there a legitimate discussion to be had over whether teacher funding should be increased? Oh, absolutely. Should that conversation take place? If you're a teacher and you believe that's the case, sure. If you're a school board member and you believe that's the case, absolutely. But let's not sit here and pretend that teachers are making $18,000 a year and they can't afford to live, but they're working 24/7 within the school system. If teachers are struggling to live, if you can't live off the salary that you're working at, then it's time for you to find another job. That's what everybody else does. I've made way less than that in my professional career early on starting off. You made it work. And guess what? I moved jobs and moved up my income. That's how it works. And so this notion that nobody can get by as an educator in North Carolina is just absurd. It makes no sense whatsoever. You want to talk about teacher pay? Again, fine conversation to have. But don't gaslight me into every single teacher is living in poverty across North Carolina because the state is starving them of a salary. Come on, give me a break. It's not based in any sort of reality in any way, shape, or form. We'll grab a quick break. On the other side, we'll hear from some of the Republican board members within the New Hanover County Board of Education, including Josie Barnhart, Pat Bradford, and Melissa Mason, as this conversation took place in New Hanover County yesterday. But before that, I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington and thank them for their continued support of the Nick Craig Show, and remind you that when legal challenges arise, make sure you put your trust in the law group. Since 2003, Melissa Gott and her experienced team of attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across Eastern North Carolina. I know it well. I used the law group, Melissa Gott and her team, when I went through the process of purchasing my first home, navigating a real estate transaction as a first-time home buyer. Phenomenal experience with Melissa and her team. The law group had my back every step of the way. Any questions, any problems, any concerns that I had, I picked up the phone, gave them a call, got my questions answered as quickly as possible. It was an absolutely phenomenal experience. They're located in downtown Wilmington, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call, 910-251-6088, or online, lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate the Law Group and their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. Quick break, more on this very interesting discussion in New Hanover County within the school system taking place. We'll have those discussions coming up as the Nick Craig Show continues, streaming live this morning, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And a good Wednesday to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Thanks for spending some time here as we discuss a teacher protest that is scheduled for May the 1st, being put on by the North Carolina Association of Educators, NCAE, the largest teachers union across the state of North Carolina. It is putting school districts and systems across the state of North Carolina in a very precarious situation as they are trying to balance keeping kids in the classroom while expecting a bunch of teachers to be walking out of school, not showing up for a workday on May the 1st. It's creating a very interesting dynamic, and that was the premise of a meeting, a specially called meeting of the new Hanover County Board of Education yesterday to have this discussion. We've heard from the superintendent. We heard from one Democrat member of the school board claiming that teachers can't get by on their salary. They can't pay for anything in their life. They need more money. Again, fair discussion, fine discussion to have. You can always, and I would argue everybody should always advocate to try and make more money if possible within their job. But let's not sit here and pretend that we're paying teachers $18,000 or $19,000 a year and expecting them to work full time. Average teacher pay in North Carolina is in the mid-50s, plus 10 months a year work, plus state health care, plus all of the benefits that you get as a state employee. I mean, there are a lot of perks there that you don't get in private business that needs to be factored into what your salary is, right? It's not just your physical paycheck that you're taking home. There's a lot of other factors as well that are often not discussed when we have this conversation. So the question to the new Hanover County School Board was, do they move a teacher workday they had scheduled for Monday, May the 1st, move that to Friday, May the 1st, move it back a couple of days to accommodate the NCAE and this teacher protest, this teacher strike that they are advocating for? Board of Education member Josie Barnhart was not putting up with it at all. These are her comments at the meeting.
As a member of this board, it's our duty to put students first, and that means recognizing that education is a partnership with parents and not a tool for political activism. When we alter, delay, or close schools, it creates real disruptions for families across this district, especially families that are working from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that don't have the flexibility or the luxury to change their schedule or don't have backup childcare. These decisions have real consequences, and I'm not going to step aside and acknowledge that. The North Carolina Constitution prohibits striking, which is exactly what the new Hanover North Carolina Association of Educators is encouraging teachers to do on May 1st. So the idea that we would even consider adjusting our calendar to accommodate politically motivated protest is deeply troubling.
I got to stop Josie Barnhart right here. That is absolutely the winning message right there. The idea that a school system that sets its calendar a year in advance, there's a whole bunch of debate on that. If you're not familiar with North Carolina calendar law, there's a lot of debate and discussion. The General Assembly says that school has to start by a certain date and end by a certain date. There are school districts that are defying state law and changing the dates around. There's a lot of discussion over calendar law here in North Carolina. It's an interesting political debate. Don't have time to get into it today. But the idea that a school system that goes through a lot of work to set up a calendar, families plan vacations, trips, and everything else around their school calendar. Obviously, you don't want to pull your kids out of school all willy-nilly. You want to make sure that if your kids are not going to be in school already for a day off, spring break, teacher work day, whatever the situation might be, that you are aligning your schedule, your calendar with what the school has. The idea that would be changed so that the NCAE, the North Carolina Association of Educators, can host a protest, a walkout, is absurd. It is totally insane. School districts should not be led around by the teachers union. There's a reason that unions are not very popular here in North Carolina, because collective bargaining is not allowed. A whole bunch of different reasons why in state law that unions are just not very popular. We see this in other states. We see this in places like Illinois and California and New York, where unions in a variety of different industries hold governments or industries hostage with their ridiculous demands. We should not be placating that here in North Carolina. We just shouldn't be.
It sends the message that political pressure is more important than educating students. We've seen the impact of school closures before. Outside of weather emergencies, the last widespread disruption occurred during COVID. That led to the biggest decline in public school enrollment that we've ever seen because it was the wrong decision for students and families. I do not support changing the calendar and accommodating a union-backed strike, not now, not ever. But if this board decides to go down this route, then at least let's be honest. I will make a motion that add a disclaimer on every single calendar that we approve that says, subject to change based on board-approved political activism. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Bravo for Josie Barnhart laying down the law there, again, making all of the points that need to be made on this. We should not be, and school districts should not be put in a position where they have to adjust their calendar and change their entire year to placate to a union. And if you're going to do that, and really what this comes down to for me is the terrible precedent that it sets. That any time a group like the NCAE says it's time to go to Raleigh, it's time to do this, it's time to do that, that schools across the state just have to scatter and try and pick up the pieces. It's a terrible precedent to set. It is completely unrealistic and unreasonable for that to be set here in North Carolina. For what? If teachers want to go to Raleigh and protest, do it on your own time. Take a PTO day. Do it during the summer. You've got 2.5 months off. Go to Raleigh then. Go on a weekend. But don't do it during the middle of the week when you're expected as an employee to be in the classroom educating kids. That's what this is. That's what this discussion is. That's what this conversation is about. We're not talking about going up there. Spring break just happened, was it last week? Go up there during spring break. I'm sure teachers wouldn't be interested in that. They wouldn't want to give up their spring break to go to Raleigh and protest. So we'll just do it when your kids are supposed to be in the classroom. It's insane. So that was Josie Barnhart. She is a Republican on the new Hanover County Board of Education. Pat Bradford is also a Republican on the school board. She had similar comments as well and made some really good points.
It's what you said a few minutes ago, that school's going to be fine. And I've really wrestled with this, and I've asked some parents. And then I looked up the National Teachers Association and the North Carolina Teachers Association to see what their platform was saying about this. So, plus I know from trying to schedule right now the finance, capital, and bond trip to Raleigh that the legislators in the short session are only there from Tuesday to Thursday. So if there's going to be a rally in Raleigh, most of your legislators aren't going to be there.
That is a phenomenal point brought up there by Pat Bradford. So again, the whole point of this, go to Raleigh, yell at Republicans in the General Assembly and claim that you're not paying teachers enough. Fine. Fair thing. That's fine. They're not even going to be there. And so the argument, well, we have to do it during the week so we can get in front of our lawmakers, doesn't pass. You could easily do this on a weekend. It's not going to matter. Lawmakers aren't going to be there on Friday. They're not going to be there on Saturday or Sunday either. And they're not going to be there on Monday. The legislature, most of the time during the short session, works like a Tuesday to Thursday schedule. So let's be perfectly clear about this. They're not having meetings with lawmakers. They're not getting in front of Phil Berger or Destin Hall or anybody else. No, they're just standing outside in front of the legislature, holding up signs and getting media attention. This doesn't actually move the needle in any significant way. Phenomenal point there by Pat Bradford.
They go home by lunchtime on Thursday. So I talked to parents, and parents said, well, we set our schedule when you set the calendar. And I was on that calendar committee that set that calendar. We set that calendar a year ago. And if I've got plane reservations, hotel reservations, cabin reservations, doctor's appointment, dentist, car appointment, I'm now going to have to change it. My babysitter situation is going to change if I'm employed. So those things count. And then we set a precedent. What do we do the next time there's a walkout called nationally? Are we going to change that day? So I'm not in favor of this. I went on the websites and I looked, and the activism, they're saying it's just a warm-up day for a full teacher walkout day in June. And I saw anti-MAGA, anti-Pete, somebody, I don't think it was our chair, it's probably the Pete in U.S. government. But there's a lot of statements that are very political on their sites that are wrapped around this day. So for those reasons, I will vote no.
Of course it is. That's what these teachers' unions and largely unions as a whole have turned into. They're just political arms for the Democrat Party and those on the progressive left. So we shouldn't be surprised about this at all. Pat makes some phenomenal points there about doctor's appointments, vacations, all of those things. If you have I've got a doctor's appointment coming up this week. If I called and said, hey, I can't make my appointment, I'm not going to get in 2 weeks. They're going to set me back by months. Same thing with your dentist. Again, families plan around the school calendar. They plan taking their kids to the dentist, taking their kids to the doctor, all of those various things that you do as a parent, they plan around the school calendar. And so when a Democrat group like the NCAE says, to hell with your calendar, to hell with having your kids in the classroom, it is more important for us to stand in Raleigh and bitch and complain about public school funding and how awful and terrible the legislature is, it just doesn't make any sense. It's completely illogical. It hurts families, it hurts kids, but notice how that is not a large portion of the conversation. Continuing our discussion today on a interesting debate that is likely happening and is in fact happening all across the state of North Carolina right now, as the North Carolina Association of Educators has scheduled a mass protest, a rally in Raleigh on Friday, May the 1st, in which they are encouraging educators all across the state of North Carolina to call out of school, not show up for their job, which is to be an educator, and go to Raleigh and complain about teacher pay, complain about teachers' salaries, complain about the Opportunity Scholarship Program, so on and so forth, all of the left-wing things that you would expect. Now back to more from the new Hanover County School Board meeting yesterday, in which this was the main topic of conversation and debate. We've already heard from her once before, but this is Judy Justice, one of the Democrat members on the school board, who again claims that she's not political, even though she's an elected member of the school board, claims she's not political, even though she ran in a Democrat county commission primary just last month to be a county commissioner. Miss Not Political. Let's hear what she has to say at this follow-up after hearing from some of her fellow colleagues.
We really need to get over the politics for a second and look at our schools.
Do you hear the point I'm trying to make? I'm an astute political observer. I can't even begin to tell you how many thousands of hours of government meetings I've watched over the last decade. This is one of the things that, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm seeing a growing trend in this phrase. It's not about politics. It shouldn't be about politics. It's not politics. It's not this. I don't understand where any of this is coming from. To me, it is a lowbrow excuse for somebody that doesn't have an argument to make. You just claim this shouldn't be about politics. Again, you're an elected official. We are literally talking about politics. Keep an eye on that as you're going to government meetings, listening to government meetings, hearing debates on issues. Anytime you hear somebody on the left say, this shouldn't be political, you know exactly where they're coming from. It is hyper-political, and they are being a complete and total hypocrite.
We really need to get over the politics for a second and look at our schools. Some parents will be inconvenienced for a while, but they got 2 weeks to figure it out. It's a work day. And, it's not even a matter of going to try to convince the people in Raleigh thinking that they will be there, because the idea is that it is the state that's going to see the amount of support that teachers have for their schools. And don't think it's any other thing. Teachers are not political. I know that for a fact. They need to be, though, because since they haven't been, they have been taken, in my opinion, taken advantage of.
Whoa, hold on a second here. What did she just say? Teachers aren't political, but they should be? Judy, this is the reason why we have seen such a mass exodus in public education. Parents and families don't want their schools politicized. They don't want politics in the classroom. And so for her to publicly state teachers need to be political, that's the issue. That's why Democrats are losing on education issues. This is why we have seen an explosion in the Opportunity Scholarship Program here in the state of North Carolina, with parents divorcing themselves from the public school system and looking at alternatives. It is because of exactly what Judy Justice is advocating for. No, teachers should not be political in their job because they're not politicians. They are hired employees. They should be doing their job of education. And a great comment coming in on our show, teachers are not political. Many are political indoctrinators. And of course, we all know that to be the case as well. But don't worry. Miss Non-Politics, Judy Justice claims, A, this shouldn't be political. B, teachers aren't political. And C, they should be political. So which one is it, Judy? Is it politics or is it not politics? Should it be political or should it not be political? completely illogical, which is exactly what you would expect from some deranged leftist like Judy Justice is.
It's time that we stood up for our kids. We can't continue to be the 51st in the nation in per pupil expenditure. And it is political. The people in power did that intentionally. Things will change. Cycles always shift. But in the meantime, this is how they shift. We need to stand up for our kids' education. And that's what they're doing. And that's why that's not going to harm those kids that day. What will harm the kids that day if things just continue the way they are.
It won't harm kids that a bunch of teachers are calling out of schools across the state and there's not going to be enough teachers, or you're going to have substitutes everywhere. I mean, really? It's not going to affect children that they're not going to be receiving education in many cases on Friday, May the 1st? I thought the whole point was it's about education. The Democrats have, in this case, specifically Judy Justice, cannot even hold together a single salient argument. It is all over the map. I mean, try following the bouncing ball. Completely incapable. A final clip here from Melissa Mason. She is also a Republican on the school board. It is a majority Republican school board in New Hanover County. These were her thoughts on it. And she pushes back on this concept that the school board is not advocating for their educators. Take a listen to this.
My thought was we do advocate. I know that I have not always agreed with everybody in this room, but I do know that there are several individuals who themselves have made multiple trips to Raleigh, who have had multiple conversations with our state legislators. So we are fighting. We are trying. So I kind of take a little bit of, I can't think of the word. I think we shouldn't be saying we're not doing anything, because we are. We are. It may not have made huge impact yet, but it takes progress. It takes relationship building. It takes a lot of time. But our board has definitely been making those steps and taking those steps to have those conversations with legislators. I know our superintendent is having those conversations with legislators. So we are fighting for sure already. I have been kind of on the fence about it myself for a variety of reasons. We do appreciate our teachers. We do understand that there's, some pay issues. We do also understand that these are not just here in North Carolina. They are far-reaching. Everybody is struggling. There are districts and counties in this state that are struggling financially overall and are in the hole overall. And so, all that being said, we are doing what we can with what we have. It is easy to sit here and I mean, we have so many kids in our district and we have so many families that this would impact in our district. It would be easy to say, well, parents can just make those adjustments, and they may not be able to. They may not be able to.
Yeah, but to hell with them. I mean, that's the whole point. That's what you just heard from Judy Justice. Parents have 2 weeks. They could just figure it out. To hell with them. To hell with their schedules and their planning and everything that they've already set aside. They're just going to have to figure it out, because it's more important for full-time employees, which are these educators that have a job of being in the classroom when they are expected to be to teach. They want to go to Raleigh and yell and scream at Republicans, so that's what they should be able to do. And the parents and the families be damned. That's the point that is being advocated for by Democrats.
Weeks might be enough time, or it might not. It depends on the family. It depends on how many hours they need to be able to get by, because costs are rising. So I think it's not something to take lightly in a variety of reasons. Yes, we care about our teachers. Yes, we want to support them. We are fighting and advocating for them. But we also have to consider the parents that may not be able to have that flexibility with their families, with their schedules, because they're living paycheck to paycheck and they just need as many hours as possible. And if we take a day that they had already been scheduled to work, we're taking some hours away from them, which is part of what they need to take care of their kids. So,
and again, this has a real impact. This affects everybody involved. It affects the school system. It affects the families. It affects everybody involved. Democrats don't seem to care about this. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed on the New Hanover County Board of Education. In a 5-1 vote, they voted to keep the calendar as is, keeping the teacher workday on Monday, May the 4th, instead of bowing down and caving to the political pressure pushed by groups like the NCAE. So bravo to the New Hanover County Board of Education. Props to the Republican majority there that held the line on this and didn't cave. Again, the precedent for me is one of the biggest things in all of this. And you heard Pat Bradford say during her comments that there's another. This is a kind of a test run, a little bit of a primer, a teaser for a more large-scale, full-on walkout in the month of June. And so I guess the schools are going to have to do that again. We're going to come back to the table again in June. Well, the NCAE is calling for another mass protest. Another day, which, by the way, lawmakers won't be there in June, but that's fine. It won't matter to them as long as they can talk about how much they hate Republicans and how bad the Republican General Assembly is and so on and so forth. That's all they care about. That's all that matters. And so I suspect in many of these districts across the state that you are going to have a lot of teachers requesting PTO. There was some discussion about this at the school, at the New Hanover County meeting yesterday, that, it gets to a certain point and then you have to stop approving PTO requests. I think at that point, you'll probably have some of the more radical teachers, those that did not get their PTO requests approved, that will probably just call out sick. And for those individuals, I believe they need to be pink slipped immediately. I think they need to be terminated. You have a job to do. You are employed by the state of North Carolina through the county in which you live, in which you teach, to show up and do your job. You can be, and you in some cases should be frustrated about things. I think that's a normal thing. But when you decide that you are going to abandon your post, that you are going to abandon your duty as an employee, we're not talking about private sector, we're talking about public sector employees. They work for the government. They work for you and I. When you decide that you are going to ignore your supervisor, in most cases the principal, and magically wake up Friday morning with a cough, and now you're going to have to call out sick. Meanwhile, you're flying 80 miles an hour up I-40 so you can get to Raleigh by 10 o'clock to protest. Those individuals need to have serious repercussions and ramifications. And I would advocate for termination. And the argument will be, we can't afford to lose good people. I would argue individuals that are lying to their supervisor, calling out sick because their PTO request got denied, because you can only have so many people in any company at PTO, on PTO at the same time. If you are willing to lie to your employer to go protest and be a political tool in Raleigh, then you are probably not worth having in the classroom. I know that that's a tough reality for a lot of people to swallow, but let's not sit here and pretend that, these are all the best people we've got. The best people we've got would be in the classroom. Again, if you have a PTO day, use your PTO. I don't care. You have the right to. You have the ability. That's part of your employment deal, is you get a certain number of days off a year. And so if you are approved for a PTO request, go hog wild. Go stand in Raleigh all day. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. That's not an issue. But if you don't have a PTO request and you just magically wake up Friday morning, May the 1st, and call out sick, which is, I suspect, is what's going to happen in many of these school districts. You call out sick on the same day that there happens to be this mass protest in Raleigh. I believe that you need to be terminated from your position. I know that's not sexy. I know that's not the nice thing to say, but it's the truth. You want to be a political advocate, have at it. Do it on your own time. But when you are expected to be at your job, especially as a public employee, you need to be at your job. I'm expected to be at my job every single day. Every single morning, I'm expected to be on the air at 5 a.m. on WBT radio in Charlotte. That is what my employer wants me to do. That is what they expect me to do. And I am. And so I just, this whole concept is just complete nonsense. I'm very appreciative to the New Hanover County Board of Education. Very appreciative for the Republicans. They're standing up against this garbage, standing up against this crap. These teachers unions should not be dog walking these school districts. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what comes of this in the coming weeks now as we approach that May the 1st. It's about, let's see, 2 weeks from Friday. So it's coming up here pretty quick, about 2.5 weeks from now. We've already previewed it on last Friday's show. If you missed that, go back and take a listen. Talking about it again now. We may have another follow-up in the next couple of days as we get closer. And then, of course, we'll recap it either on probably not the 1st, but coming up on that Monday, May the 4th, right here on the Nick Craig Show. Well, thanks for spending some time with us here on this Wednesday morning. Thanks to the Law Group in Wilmington for their continued support. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com or 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. It's also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app, and it's heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.